and R&D head at Synopsys. He is and also collaboration with customers. He is a versatile technology leader with 25 years of career-long record of challenging tape-outs, design team setup, and strategic operation management. Across his multiple stints, he has displayed proficiency in establishing a strategic vision, challenges, and influencing both directly organizational and indirectly global ecosystems. Dr. Shivanand, with expertise in full chip and complex IP implementation, verification, and design methodologies, is instrumental in delivering multiple first-time rights. Prior to Synopsys as a site head and GM, he was instrumental in setting up MediaTek Bangalore site and defining growth strategies, creating innovation capabilities, enabling systems, ecosystems, and building breakthrough business models. He enjoys building performing teams and takes pride in having guided and mentored a strong bench of future leaders. From being the founding director of a school to being a professor in electronics and communications to serving as a board of studies member and being a part of the advisory board in leading academic institutions, he has contributed to the academia space as well. As an author, he derived inspiration from real life stories all around him and has published two books titled 50 Shades of Life and 50 Colors of Love. He is a recipient of the Employee Excellence Award in recognition of efforts as an outstanding Synopsys employee and was awarded Distinguished Alumni of Malnad College of Engineering. A doctorate in management, he is an alumnus of IIM Bangalore, completed his master's degree in electrical engineering from OGI USA, completed his BTech from Mysore University, and has certifications in relevant courses from leading universities across the world, like the Columbia Business School, Wharton School, University of Virginia, MIT Sloan School, and ESAID Spain. So before we proceed to listen to Dr. Koteshwar, I have a few updates to share about this session and the MIT ID Innovation Program webinar platform. For those who are joining us for the first time today, I'd like to inform you that MIT stands for the 4-decade-old Maharashtra Institute of Technology. ID stands for MIT's 15-year-old Pioneering Institute of Design. MIT ID's one-year innovation program focuses on the 4 pillars of design, business, technology, and humanities. The key features and differentiators of this one-year course are immersions, project-based learning, and humanities. So on behalf of Professor Harshit Desai, the head of the innovation program, and the core team, we're grateful to be amongst you all hosting the session today. Today's webinar will have our guest speaker share his insights for the first half hour, followed by questions facilitated by me in the latter half hour. For the MIT ID Innovation Program, welcome you all once again to this thoughtfully curated innovation journey. So over to our innovator, Dr. Koteshwar. Welcome once again, sir.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, audible.
Okay. So thank you very much for the introduction. As you rightly said, I will spend the first 30 minutes just to give you a little bit pointers about the GCC, which is nothing but the Global Competency Center. And then we can have the next half an hour, 20 minutes for question and answer. So let me dive into my presentation. So I will be dividing my presentation into 3 sections. I will be just talking about GCC. Some of you might be very new to this terminology. So let me just spend a few minutes on what is GCC, how was the journey to GCC. And the second part of my presentation talks about how did we move from being an offshore center to becoming a GCC. And this is the journey of every multinational company we have in India. So I will be talking about that part of it. And finally, I'll be just touching upon one very important dimension which we all need to add to our toolkit, to our thinking toolkit, and enable this journey for next 10 to 15 years. So how do we do this? So these are the 3 sections of my presentation. So the first part of it is the GCC itself. So before I get into the details, Um, if you look at the presentations and documentation just 5-6 years back, you will not actually see the word GCC. You will see a word called GIC, which is nothing but a global in-house center. So usually GIC is nothing but multinational company owned units that undertake work that supports the parent global organizations. If you remember, in 1990s is when the first company which came, US company came to India, which was called as Texas Instruments, right? So TI was one of the first companies, which was a multinational company, which actually set up a base in India and started this journey for almost all the semiconductors and software companies. So these are actually the parent company was in US or in Europe, and they had an extended team in India. And the primary reason why they looked at India back then was primarily because of the cost. And a lot of things have changed since then. But just for the definition purpose, I want to let all of you know that GIC actually means the Global In-House Center. What we are talking today is about GCC, which stands for Global Competency Center. And the better word I would say is a Global Capability Center. Today, GCC actually means Global Capability Center. There is a subtle difference between competency and capability. Competency is more an individual centric skill set. Capability is more a center specific capabilities, right? The definition. So usually the word GCC stands for Global Capability Center right now. So the topic also could have been innovation in Global Capability Center instead of Global Competency Center. So what kind of companies are we talking about in GCC? There are primarily three different kinds of verticals. The first vertical is the business process management, or the BPM. This is where the non-core activities of a company is outsourced to Indian companies, right? So this is around finance and accounting, HR, sales, marketing, procurement, technology-based services, market research and analytics. So there are a lot of companies in India which actually focuses primarily on the BPM side of it. The second vertical where we have MNC centers in India is called as the engineering, research and development services, or ER&D services and product deployment. Here, the deployment need not be an entire product. It can be a subsystem or the entire product itself. It depends on the maturity of the company and the maturity of the team in India. Here, it's about R&D, prototyping, development, testing, maintenance, support, and even service. So there are a lot of companies today who have actually done the entire journey of product development from India. Again, it depends on the maturity of the company, maturity of the teams in India, and the capability the teams have developed in India. And the third vertical is around IT services. This is where a lot of software companies are focusing on. This includes application development and maintenance and consulting, primarily an infrastructure management kind of a company, right? So we call it also as a managed services or managed hosting services is what this vertical is called. And the industry is split between these three verticals. Again, each one of them have derived and created value for their parent companies. I come from the centerpiece, which is the engineering, R&D services and product development. So with that definition, let's dive into the definition itself of GCC, right? So what is GCC in a nutshell, right? So we are talking about around 10 lakh kind of talent, who are working in GCC right now. We have around 1,250 GCC as we speak today. We started off in 2015 when the survey was done. We had around 1,000 companies. And in the last 4 years, we have been successfully added another 250 companies in India. The market size is around $28.3 billion. Again, if you see the 2015 data, we were at $19.4 billion, a fantastic growth for this market. We have around 8 unicorn GCCs, which is more than $1 billion company. In the last few years, we've added 5 more unicorns. The initial focus was on tier 1 locations. Until 2015-16, the focus was on the tier 1 locations like Bangalore, Pune, Bombay, Noida, NCR area, and Chennai. But today, the focus is shifting towards emerging tier 2 locations. The earlier technology focus was around mobility, social, and analytics. Today, we are seeing a lot of traction in AI/ML, IoT, RPA, and big data. On the operation side, the focus was primarily on in-house delivery. And today it's more on the ecosystem partnership. I'll just touch upon the ecosystem partnership in 1 or 2 slides, I think, which might be interesting for all of you guys who might be studying in MIT or who are working in MIT right now. And On the autonomy side, it was primarily owning up a delivery, but today we have centers and leaders who actually not only own the delivery, but also be a part of the transformation, and the entire portfolio ownership also has come to India. And if you really look at the span of control, it was primarily an MD kind of a position, managing director kind of a position, who was responsible for India center. But today we have leaders from India who are actually multifunctional global centers, and the leaders also have a global role, no longer they're India centric, and including my role, for example. Most of my responsibilities not just pertains to India, but also Taiwan and US. So this is a nutshell. So in nutshell, we are looking about a $28 billion market, which employs around 10 lakh people, which actually occupies around 35 million square feet of real estate. And what is interesting to see is almost more than 48% of the companies who want to go outside their host country, whether it's Europe or US or Asia, the preferred destination is India. That's a fantastic number, right? Almost 50% of the companies, when they want to go out of their country, India is their preferred destination. And out of the 1250 companies which we have in India, almost 400 plus companies are primarily in the technology area. So that's the quick summary of the market itself. And why are they looking at India today? The whole focus of India today, yes, I do agree that initially the focus was primarily because of the cost. But today, the reason why all these companies are in India is because of the emerging talent. And if you look at all the new age skill set and talents, what is required for the industry verticals, whether it's a software or a semiconductor or telecommunication, all the skill sets, India literally stands number 2 in almost all these technologies. In mobility, of course, we are number 1, similar to US. But if you really look at all the different skill sets, we are actually number 2. And that's a primary reason why every company outside India is looking at setting up their base in India. So how did we transition into this, right? That's very important for, some of you are very new to this industry. Some of you, I don't know how many, I have 25 years of experience. So I have actually seen this transition happen in different verticals, right? So this was something which was told by a person called Sham Banerjee in TI, but he actually captured it very nicely. So I'm using, what he told in one of the meetings many years back. So usually we all start off as a design center in India. So somebody, have a center in US, they decide that, I don't want to set up a team in India. And usually they say, okay, we want to set up a team of 20 people or 30 people. And here it's completely micromanaged from US. And here you are completely measured on execution, nothing else. So all you're trying to do is, hey, there is a team in India. Are they useful to me? That's the whole, framework of measurement for a team. Slowly, we move towards being a part of the critical success factor for the organization. So here, what we talk about is we are not only valued on execution, but we are also valued on core competencies now. Slowly, we start getting accountability for who and how. Only these two parts. We don't get the, get to say around what and when, but at least on who and how is something which we can start looking at, which means the schedules will be defined by US or Europe. We just have to execute it. We can define what kind of people we need in our team and how do we execute it. So that's the next part of the journey. The third part of the journey is slowly, once we prove ourselves, we got into a third stage of sub-strategy ownership. This is where we started driving the strategic components, not the entire strategy, but some components of the strategy. This is where we started getting a little bit accountability on what and when also. We could actually start talking about functional stacks. We could start talking about the schedule of the projects. Finally, we got into the phase of actually owning the entire strategy or the entire product. This is where you get a global accountability. So this is a journey almost every company in India has gone through, right? Whether it's TI, whether it's Broadcom, Intel, Qualcomm, all these companies have gone through this journey. And this is the phases, right? It all starts with the trial phase, gets into a value creation phase, gets into a differentiation phase, and finally gets into a global organization phase. This is the 4 stages of maturity of all the GCC. Let's not call it as GCC to start with. Let's call it as Offshore Center. This is how we had the journey. And I was lucky to actually go through this entire journey or twice in my career, once in Synopsys and once in MediaTek, right? So we have seen this journey very successfully. What is different today is the journey which used to take 10 years from trial to global organization today takes around 3 to 4 years, because The talent is very, very mature in India. So every company which is primarily looking at adding value, this is a fantastic framework which I'm borrowing from Tim and Rene. This is what we all try to do, right? Initially, when we set up the team, when we are 50 people or 30 people team, the initial focus of India Center is around eliminate and reduce. What I mean by this, it is around cost, right? It is about bottom lines. It's about what factors can I reduce below the industry standards, which means if something requires 4 items, can I do the same efficiency and productivity and quality by reducing one of the factors? That's something which the reduce cycle goes through. The second one is eliminate. If it requires 4 different subcomponents to come out with a system, can I eliminate one of them, but still maintain the same productivity, efficiency, and quality? This is how we established centers earlier. But today, once you establish the centers, the leaders try to go beyond the cost and start looking at what additional value can I create. And usually this value creation happens through raise, which is which factors should be raised well above the industry. Everybody does the same thing, but if this is done in India Center, you can guarantee that these are the 2-3 things which will be better. For example, quality was one of them, which most of the Indian companies hooked on to. And any software development which was done in India, the quality was very, very high, right? And that's one of the biggest advantages we had. And that was one of the biggest catalysts also for more and more companies to come to India. And finally, we get into the stage where we start looking at which factors should be created so that the industry has never seen. So what can we offer from India to the global organization? And the create and raise part is around strategic investment. The reduce and eliminate part is more on the cost cycle. Every company picks and chooses which value they want to add in India. I'm not saying this is a cycle. You can pick and choose what you want to do from India. It can be only reduce, it can be only eliminate, it can be a combination of create and raise, it can be a combination of create and reduce. It really depends on the strategy of the company which is setting up in India. And how do we do this? The other thing which we also use primarily in setting up some of this organization is a term called a COE, or Center of Excellence. So what we do is we need a starting point, and the starting point always is a niche differentiated skill set which India offers, right? We always start with identifying the skill set which will help us establish the COE, and then we get into the establishment of COE in that particular area. And finally, with that established COE, we try to increase the ownership and increase our value to the organization. This is a journey we take almost in all the different centers we have set up. So just to summarize, we start with cost arbitrage, but as a leader, the next question we have is how do we increase the value? How do we increase the value of the center, what we have created in India, to the global organizations? It can be around delivering projects with higher complexity. It can be increasing the scope of services delivered. It can be building a competency which can be used for further and future R&D kind of activities. It can be just on improving delivery efficiency. It can be on contributing to the top line while we are adding to the bottom line. It can be a team which is primarily focusing on emerging market focus, which none of the other centers are doing. And finally, it can be on creating IPs from India. And I'll show you a slide where we have a huge rise in the number of IPs which the India is creating. And the new mandate for the leaders is around how do we build and run a center of excellence? How do we try to get an India-specific charter? This is one of the biggest challenge all the leaders have, and they always try to do this because this is where you can add value. And is there an emerging market which I can go after? Can I get a global charter, right? And can I look at some of the new age requirements which the companies might need? For example, a digital charter. Can I own the entire digital transformation journey for my parent company? So these are different mandates the leaders have, but these are different avenues where I can look at increasing my value to the organization. And we all start with administrative efficiency to start with, which primarily focus on operations, finance, HR, and customer. But slowly, in the last few years, the focus actually has been around market, around competency development, and around research and engineering. So when we look at research and engineering, for example, how do we really maximize benefits to the global organization? How do we enable the local ecosystem? How do we create thought leadership from India? How do we improve the engineering tools? These are some of the things which we look at. What kind of technologies can be transferred from US or Europe or China to India so that we can deliver higher value on that? So the focus has moved away from being efficient to creating a bigger value in the organization. Again, it depends on the journey and the maturity of the organizations. There are two biggest levers which we have in India. One is the university, the other one is the startup. So let me just talk about the university first. Most of the companies in India have a fantastic collaboration with the universities here. I mean, it can be tier 1 universities, it can be tier 2 universities. It really depends on the kind of engagement the companies have with the universities. It can be around sponsored infrastructure. There are companies which is setting up labs inside the universities. It can be around training and curriculum design. Synopsys, for example, is working with a couple of universities on curriculum design. It can be around consulting, where you are working with the professors on a specific consulting or a business problem. It can be around open research area. This is a classic example where a company like Synopsys is working with IIT Mumbai, IISc, and also with IIT Kharagpur, right? Or it can be a purely outcome-based partnership where you actually sign an MOU and agreement and invest on a project or an engagement and co-create together with the universities. So this is one of the levers which most of the GCCs are using very effectively today. And the second one is on the startup. So on the startup, the journey and the approach is very, very different. It really depends on the companies. It can be on platform evangelization. For example, corporates can offer their entire platform to startups. For example, Amazon is a classic example which actually uses this platform evangelization method. Microsoft also uses this method. Or it can be around license or vendor agreement. This is something Synopsys primarily does with startups or even the training centers. Or it can be a joint go-to-market strategy. This is something which the Chinese companies are very effectively working with Indian companies and releasing multiple phones or laptops or multiple things, right? So we see a lot of joint go-to-market strategies which is happening. The fourth one can be co-innovation, where you actually work with the startup on a business problem, on a technical problem, and actually co-create, right? Or co-innovate together. It can be around acquihire, which is nothing but acquiring the talent without the assets and the liabilities. And we have seen many, many corporates, big corporates actually, which have done the acquihire right now. Or it can be on an equity investment, right? Companies like Qualcomm, Intel Ventures, or Qualcomm Ventures literally invest in the startups, which is in the same areas what they do, and try to leverage them or leverage their expertise for their entire solution, right? It really helps the ecosystem. And the final one, of course, is acquisition itself, where the corporates work with the startup, might start the route through equity investment or through platform evangelization, and finally acquire the companies. And Synopsys, Intel, Broadcom, many, many examples we have where they have acquired a lot of companies through this route. So these are the two major levers the Indian companies are using these days. And the journey is, from the how the Offshore Design Center journey was. The similar journey from the Offshore Design Center to GCCs has been. The focus of Offshores was primarily on the setup. Then we moved into a stage which was mostly called as captives, which is primarily the ramp up kind of a stage which we were looking at. Finally, a lot of value addition happened, which is around GICs. And finally, breakthrough innovations are happening. This is where the GCC journey is today, right? And the focus right now, if you look at these four different kinds of companies or stages, on the setup stage, it was primarily to prove the concept, right? Is this working fine? Is this does this have the team have the required technical skills and the maturity to deliver what they have agreed on? The second one was around cost arbitrage and mature delivery itself. It was around quality. It was around process efficiency. It was on capacity augmentation. I have a team of 50. Can I increase it to 100? Can I increase it to 150? The operating model was primarily, it was vertical integration. So we looked at one business unit which came to India, and that business unit grew here. And this is where a lot of local leaders were developed. And finally, it went to the GIC mode, which was primarily on value addition. Here, it was around high skill capabilities, because now Indian talent had a wide range of experience, not just working on local projects, but also on international projects. So it was about driving process change and efficiency. And this is where companies like Accenture, companies like Infosys, companies like TCS, Mindtree played a very, very major role here. And it was a very effective metrics organization. And this is where the subject matter experts came in. And this is where we started having global functional heads and select business leads. And finally, we have the GCCs, which is primarily the breakthrough innovations. And this became an integral part of the global network organization. If you really talk about Indian companies, right, which is like Infosys or Wipros or the Mindtrees of the world and other companies, they don't fall into the GCC category because they're Indian companies trying to go outside India. So if Infosys sets up a center in US, there's a reverse kind of an approach which the Indian company is taking to establish the center in US, and primarily again might be because of business or because of talent. Usually GICs and GSCs are talking about the multinational companies which is coming to India. Okay, so the examples also it will be around these ones. So the journey has been from efficiency to value creations. So we are talking about offshore to captives to GICs to GCC journey. And again, this journey I think is around 15 to 20 years of journey for some of these companies where they have actually started off as offshore center and finally become a global competency center today or capability center today. So let's look at what are the trends right now, which is so one is global unicorns are driving platform engineering work from India. So that's continued right now. There were companies every year. We keep adding more and more companies from outside India coming and setting up centers. The biggest advantage of something fantastic traction what we've seen is we have Asia-Pac based MNCs who are joining the GCC ecosystem right now. We almost have more than 80 or 90 companies which are actually headquartered outside India in Asia-Pac who have a center in India. In the last 3 years alone, we have seen 60% of the APAC-based GSTs are actually from China. And earlier it was primarily from Japan and Singapore. But in the last 3 years, we are seeing more and more Chinese companies setting up their centers in India, primarily because of the talent. The second one is Bangalore, of course, continues to hold the lion's share of the GCC talent pool, but the other cities are also ramping up really well. And tier 2 cities are witnessing the uptick in the GCC setup right now. This is a quick summary of the talent which is spread out in the tier 1 city right now. Bangalore, Hyderabad, Pune, Mumbai, NCR, Chennai, and others. And as you see here, majority of the talent is concentrated in Bangalore and Hyderabad, but Pune is not far behind. And we see a good uptake in Pune, primarily around core engineering verticals, such as automotive, chemicals, and materials to start with. But in the last 2 years, we have seen semiconductor companies also. Specifically on semiconductors, we have around 50 to 60 multinational companies, which employs around 30,000 employees. The key locations are Bangalore and Hyderabad, but of course we do have companies where we have centers in Mumbai, NCR, and also in Pune. In fact, Synopsys have centers in all these regions we talked about. And the focus of most of these GCCs, apart from driving the efficiency and productivity and being a extended team, they're also looking at building the next generation processors to support AI, ML, and big data workloads. So we are seeing a lot of innovation from Intel, from Qualcomm, from Synopsys, Cadence, from NVIDIA around the next generation processors and AI, ML activities which is happening in India, again, mainly because of the talent and the ecosystem that India offers to enable this particular segment. And as a leader, the focus, while we are always careful about the cost and service delivery, we have started looking at building the mid-level leadership because that's the most important thing for a successful GCC. And contextualization is a key differentiator. So we need to have leaders who have the ability to shift across evolving business and technology context, because both of these are very, very dynamic. As you know, the business and technology context keep changing all the time. So you need a very matured manager who can actually take up a global role to enable this. So that has been the focus of most of the leaders in the organization. And so what has happened with COVID, right? So we were already seeing the cost arbitrage was reducing. India was no longer offering a 1 to 6 kind of advantage in terms of cost. As you all know, there is a heightened global regulations right now. Nationalist regulations have started beginning to hurt innovation. There are companies which is stopping the innovation of the other countries, which which is actually taking them back in terms of innovation index right now. But on the positive side, global enterprise connectiveness is very, very high right now. And we already had moved from work in office to work from home, but actually it is moving to work from any location right now. I think that's the next phase of journey we would have seen next 2-3 years, but because of COVID, we are actually seeing that much faster. Global talent is relocating across different countries, different cities. Um, India is definitely at a global seat right now. We are on the hot seat. We were always in the hot seat in the last 15 years. The journey continues. We are producing fantastic talent year on year. Most of the talent in India are upskilling, which is one of the most important things we need for an industry which is changing rapidly. And with COVID, what has happened is the R&D, right, is the spend has increased in India because they need to be faster in innovation cycle. And I think we have done a fantastic job on that part of it. Global digital transformation ownership primarily is being transferred to India right now because we have the capabilities, we have the talent required to do that. And global talent rebasing in India is also happening, where we are seeing more and more CXO kind of roles, which is where Indians are being chosen over other Asian hubs right now. And Indian leadership profile has a solid prominence right now because of the deeper ownership of high value service delivery by most of this GCC center heads. So this is something which we have seen in the last 4 months. And the last part of my presentation is around what is that needed dimension for thinking, right? So we all talk about research and development. Research doesn't mean researching, right? It's not about searching again. Research actually means systematic investigation to establish facts. And if you really look at the R&D spend, right, we touch almost $1.7 trillion. That is the kind of investment which goes into the R&D, and it is growing year on year at a very healthy rate of 5%. And the number of researchers also are increasing and has to increase if you really want to create value in the organization. So if you do not have an innovation mindset, it becomes very difficult to actually focus on the research part of it. Development, we are always good. India was always good in development. The challenge we have today is how do we improve our research quotient? And when we look at it, the biggest question is, what are we doing on the R part of the R&D, right? So we have done a fantastic job in development. We are doing good work on the research part of it, but it's not enough for India. And I'll give an example. Right? If you look at this chart, this is a UNESCO sheet which was published in 2017. Not much might have changed in the last 2 years, but if you really look at it, the x-axis is the total R&D expenditure as a percentage of GDP. And the y-axis talks about the researchers per million inhabitants. And what you see here is a sad, map for India, right? India is way below, close to, South Africa, right? In near 1. What it means is Israel is spending a considerable amount of money as a part of R&D expenditure, which is a percentage of GDP. At the same time, the number of researchers per million inhabitants is very, very high. And naturally, if you have more researchers, the innovation index also will increase. So if you think about an innovative country, without looking at this graph, some of the countries you would talk about will be in the top right corner. Right? It can be Israel, it can be Korea, it can be Japan, it can be Sweden, it can be Denmark, Switzerland, Singapore, US, Germany. These are the countries where the innovation is very, very high because of this exact reason, where the companies in India, whether it's a GCC or an Indian company, might not be spending enough on the research part of it. So that's the biggest challenge we have. So if you really look at just these 4 countries, which are multiple extremes, right? Israel spends 4.2% of their GDP on R&D, where India spends 0.8%. The number of researchers per million inhabitants is 8,341, and in India we have 156. See the big difference over here, right? And if you really look at the R&D spend, which happens in Israel, the maximum spend happens through business and universities, and very less from the government. And if you look at India, the maximum spend happens because of government and business, and very, very less from universities. That's something which needs to increase. Unless you have more and more research activities in the universities, it is very difficult to up the innovation quotient of the country. So it's very, very important to, for the corporates to support the PhD programs in India. It's very important for the corporates to actually work and collaborate with universities to not only deliver fantastic programs and courses around innovation, but also important to actually invest in the universities so that co-creation can happen. So what is good is between 2015 and 19, we have seen a significant rise in patents filing from India. And a quick summary of that, almost 6,500 patents were filed in the US by India domiciled companies. This includes both GCC and Indian companies, which is almost an increase of 40%. And technology patents continue to show a majority raise, and 60% increase in 2015-19 is what we see, and almost out of this, 50% of the technology patents have been granted already. And Indian companies continue to lead a diverse set of signees. So we are not just focused on one particular vertical or one particular vertical which is filing the patents. We see a good, healthy mix of research, academia companies filing the patents here, right? And the share of emerging technologies continue to grow in technology patents to reach almost 60% in India. So the new age technology patents are also increasing, which is again a very, very healthy sign, but we are far less than China. So let me be very clear on that. So we are doing good, but definitely much more needs to be done in this area. So new age application areas such as logistics, text data mining, gaming, consumer electronics, and vehicle technology lead the technology patent growth story, but less in the AI and NLP side right now. And Indian startups, which is a very healthy sign, is showing a fantastic increase in the IP creation. Almost 280 patents were filed in the last 4 years, which is definitely a good sign from the startups. But again, the patents have been primarily in the healthcare and the medical devices, not really in the AI and the NLP and ML side. So how do we really preserve the curiosity in the newer workforce? This is one of the biggest challenges I have as R&D head. How do I instill curiosity? So if my talent is not curious enough, innovation can never happen, right? So the biggest fundamental thing which I need is, can I have an engineer who joins, irrespective of the number of years of experience the person has? Does he have curiosity? Can I instill curiosity in a person? Or at least can I preserve the curiosity in a person, right? Chaos and disorder is sometimes very, very healthy. Nothing is wrong, right? With chaos and disorder comes innovation. So it's very, very important for an organization to have a mixed culture of discipline, chaos, and disorder, right? This is very hard to digest, but it's very important to have that, right? If you have a very structured organization, it becomes very difficult for us. And actually disorder comes because they're experimenting on so many things. So disorder is something which we have to embrace, and we need to create a system to preserve the curiosity. And we all have to make sure that we retain the R in the R&D. And the dimension which is very, very important for this is the design thinking. You might have heard of this in the last 1 year, but it's becoming very, very obvious right now to add this toolkit to our innovation cycle. So when we talk about design thinking, again, let me not get into the design thinking definition here, but in a nutshell, it is human-centered, it is option-focused. We actually have a divergent and convergent approach here of thinking. It is possibility-driven. None of the options we can discount it saying it's not possible. We need to consider each and every possible options. It's empathetic in nature because it's human-centered. So empathy is very, very important here. It's very iterative in nature, and it's very inventive in nature. So we don't wait for the final spec to come. We empathize, we define, we ideate, we prototype, we test, and we implement. If it's not okay, we do the cycle again. So we keep implementing it again and again. We keep doing the prototypes again and again so that our definition becomes stronger and stronger. It's a very different model than the waterfall model. So does it mean that we should not even think of linear thinking or a business thinking? No. This is an additional tool or an additional dimension to the linear thinking. So one example which actually summarizes what to do where is, if you're trying to solve a puzzle, which means where you have the right level of data to actually solve it, you just have to know how to solve it. Then traditional thinking is the right thing because all you need is logical thinking, right? But if you're trying to solve mysteries, you might have more data than what is required. There might be something which is completely missing to solve the solution. So if you are trying to solve a mystery, then a linear thinking or a traditional thinking doesn't work. you really need to look at a design thinking. And that's exactly what, that is where the application of design thinking is. So as I told you earlier, it actually involves both convergent and divergent thinking. And design thinking gives us curiosity. That's a fundamental requirement of being innovative, right? That's exactly what we're trying to do. And again, as I told you, we don't discount design thinking, linear analytical methods for design thinking. We need to know which thinking to apply where. So if it is a human-centered problem, usually design thinking works better because that's a fundamental premise of design thinking. If you clearly understand the problem, then linear analytical method is the right way to do it because you have all the inputs which is required to solve the problem. If you do not have if you do not even understand the problem, then design thinking is the right, because without understanding the problem, how can you even solve the solution, right? How can you even arrive at a solution? So it's very, very important for us to see which thinking works. What's the level of uncertainty? If the level of uncertainty is not much, linear analytical thinking or business thinking is the ideal way of solving it. But if the uncertainty is very, very high, then it is better to use design thinking because you can at least prototype, test it, release it, test it, and come back to the drawing board. And what kind of data is already available to you? If there is a lot of data, if you're doing an incremental innovation, then linear analytical method is the right thing to do. But if there is very, very less data, then of course, design thinking is the right thing to do. Again, just to emphasize, I'm not saying design thinking is going to replace the different models we have. This is an add-on which is required right now to increase the curiosity so that we can increase the innovation within our companies and actually create a higher value to their organization. So this is my last slide. So just to give you an example of Synopsys, what am I doing, right? So if you really look at Synopsys, we are a $3.36 billion company, and we do a very healthy spend of almost 34% of our revenues on R&D. And if you really look at the graph, we have done a very steady increase in our R&D spend because it's very, very important for us to be innovative, to make sure that we are on the cutting edge, because we are supporting customers who are working on the cutting edge solutions, whether it's a smartphone companies like Qualcomm or MediaTek or Apple or Intel, or whether it's a processor company like AMD, Intel, Samsung, or any of these companies. They're all working on cutting edge designs, and they really depend on us to give them a fantastic tool so that they can tape out their chips successfully. So it's very, very important for us to have an enabling mindset, a culture of innovation, and on-the-move behavior. Very, very important. And these are all actually ingredient of a design thinking process. And this is exactly what we do in Synopsys, where we keep pushing the boundaries of technologies because our customers are doing so. So it's very, very important for us to also look at what kind of solutions can we offer to customers so that they can design chips faster with lesser resources and first time success to the market. So it's very important for us. And this is just an example of Synopsys. Any companies, if you ask me to do a slide, it's similar to this. Every company is spending considerable amount on R&D because technology leadership is very, very important to sustain in this market today. So thank you. With that, I'll open up for questions right now. So all these slides will be available on the SlideShare after the presentation. Please take a look at there. All my presentations are there in the SlideShare. So if you need any presentation, this presentation or the earlier presentation, you can find it there. I have 2 LinkedIn profiles. I request you to connect me on this LinkedIn profile because that one is almost full right now. So please feel free to ask any questions you have.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Koteshwar. You know, you spent, I think it's been such a rich time just listening to, all that you had to share. Again, it was like packed with data, packed with insights. And you've been around in the industry for more than now 25 years plus. So I think for all the people who've been able to join in for your session, I think major set of learnings and takeaways from the same. Thank you so much for spending your time and taking the pain basically to prepare the slides and also kind of run us through them as quickly as we could in this limited time. We'll move on to questions now. There's one which says that how does the innovation mindset play a role in a services company as compared to a product company?
See, whether we are a service company or first of all, I don't like to define the industry as a service company and a product company, because today, if you really
Sure.
pure service companies, whether it's an Indian company or a GCC, whether it's a Infosys or you look at Cognizant kind of companies, even the services are being packaged very, very efficiently in the product. right? So service as a product
Right.
is a very common term which we see in the industry today. And the reason
Mhm.
they were able to do it is because they have created a lot of value in this service. So innovation mindset is something which we all need at every level. I'm not talking about only leadership levels, every level. That what will keep India, you know, separate us from the rest of the crowd. Otherwise, what's the difference between if you're talking about hard work, everybody does hard work. I mean, the world is working hard today, right? If you really look at the basic engineering talent or the business management talent,
Mhm.
everybody has that. Every country has a good university today.
Mhm.
If you talk about grit, everybody has a grit today, right? Everybody wants to be successful. Everybody will put their best foot forward. But innovation is something which you need to have a mindset to start with, as you rightly said, right? Innovation doesn't come because you're practicing or you have 25 years of experience or 30 years of experience. It is very, very important for us to actually have a different mindset for innovation. Only when you decide that innovation will be a part of my DNA, it will never happen. So whether you're a service company or a product company, I feel innovation mindset is a key for a career success. Forget about company, forget about industry and other things. If you want to be successful in the career today, it's very, very important to have this kind of mindset. And you can train yourself to be. Design thinking also is not something which you need to be a designer to have a design thinking. It's a kind of thinking process which you and I can be trained to do that. And I'm sure some of the people who are joining your courses also, for example, on innovation, might be, experience might be 2 years to 20 years, right? The reason why they come and join is because, again, innovation is a mindset change, which we all need to have.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, I'm just circling back to your own individual journey. You come in from a family of hospitality veterans. You decided to do something different. You did not want to possibly join the business. And I think you also wanted to become a doctor. And then, of course, now eventually evolving into this, uh, absolutely up to date technologist. Do I feel that, I mean, you would have been, born with an innovation mindset in a way
Not really. I was not.
at a very early, okay.
Not really. So,
Mhm.
because, like anybody else, I mean, if you talk to my peers, right, most of us did engineering or medical or law, whatever it is, right? Because we didn't have any other choice. I mean, if you get good marks in science and maths, the only option I had was engineering or medical. But for some reason,
Mhm.
I didn't take medical. I still repent for it. I didn't even try. I mean, I didn't even apply for the exam. I really repent for it because I always felt I would have been a good doctor. But anyway, my engineering journey started with that. And who are passed out during
Okay.
right 95, 96. I passed out in 95. We were all very lucky. I mean, I can and on with my
Mhm.
achievements, and I can say I did this, I did that, but actually, honestly speaking, we passed out at the right time, right? And the industry was picking up at that time. So people who worked hard, put in their efforts, actually were a part of the success journey, right? So all my peers pretty much are successful today because the environment helped us a lot. And environment is something which we cannot control, right? And today, if you look at today's situation, I really, you know look at people
Mhm.
passing out this year. It's so difficult for them, right? It's unfortunate for them, right? It's so damn difficult to even establish themselves,
True.
irrespective of what they have planned, what they have done. And it's very, very difficult. Luckily, I didn't have that.
Mhm.
But every time in my career, I was always clear that I need to add value.
Mhm.
I didn't understand that it was around innovation mindset or anything, but I always wanted to ensure that I add value to my job. I always
Mhm.
wanted company wanting me more than I need my company. So I was never worried about my job because I always were in a state where company wants me more than I want the company. If you and the only way you can do that is actually being very focused on your work and trying to see how can I add value. If you with that mindset, any one of us can grow in the organization. It doesn't matter whether you're in service industry or in product industry, GCC, whether you're in a university, right? All of us will grow if we have that kind of a right mindset, right? Which is primarily a growth mindset.
Right, right. Thank you. Could you tell us something about the chip also that was used, behind Google Chromecast and Amazon Echo as well?
Definitely. So I was, as I told you earlier, I actually took a break from Synopsys in 2012 and actually went into a completely different journey of starting a CBSE school. So I set up a school called Amatra Academy. This was in Bangalore in Sarjapur Road, which was tied up with the this was a school which is a PES school. PES is the #1 university in India, and the PES university asked me if I would help them set up the school. So I was very fortunate to be a part of the team who set up the school. So 3 years I was completely out of the industry. Had a very different insight. Then MediaTek wanted to come to India in 2014. Now, 2014 was a year when you thought you had every company already in India, and suddenly you have this Taiwan company who wanted to set up their center in India. The journey started very similar, right? We will start with 12 people, and then we will experiment with, then we will expand the team. And the journey, according to MediaTek, might have been 10-year kind of a journey, which they thought. But we were able to accelerate the entire journey in 3 years. I mean, by in three and a half years, we were able to touch almost 500 people in India only on the hardware side. Right? Software team we already had, but side we had a fantastic team, and we were able to deliver on some of the projects which the corporate was doing. So our headquarters was in Taiwan, and Google was one of our primary customers at that time, where most of the products from Google was actually designed by MediaTek. And we were very, very lucky to be a part of that chip design, which went into the products of Google. And as you rightly said, Amazon products and Google products, a lot of those chips were actually done in India. We didn't have the complete ownership, but we had, I would say, almost 60-70% of the ownership of the chip. And this was just in 1 year or 2 years of setting up the team, which clearly means, as I told you earlier, the journey was much faster, right? From the trial phase to the global team. The journey which used to take around 10 years, we were able to cut it down by 3 to 4 years. And the team is doing fantastic right now, working on some of the new age chips which will hit our market in the next 3 to 4 years. So they're doing really well right now. So I moved back to Synopsys 2 years back. So that was my journey in MediaTek.
Right.
We were a part of, we were lucky actually to be a part of some of these flagship products from the company.
Right place, right time.
Yes.
Matters a lot.
Again, yes.
Right. Now, with all that's been happening pretty much last 2.5 decades at your end, through your professional journey, and now with COVID striking the entire world, I should say, do you see traction in GCCs again being on the same path, again on an accelerated mode, or do you really see some sort of a pullback happening?
No, actually, the acceleration is higher right now, because as you might have seen, there is a major push from moving companies from different countries to India right now. The government is also enabling it. The ecosystem is enabling it. And India as a destination is, we have this feeling of being safe country, right? In terms of technology, in terms of IPs, in terms of people, India is actually a safe country. A lot of these companies, whether it's from Japan, whether it's from Asia Pac or US or Europe. So we will definitely, I don't think the rate is going to reduce. It might even increase in the next few years. Just a small dent in the journey. I don't think it's going to impact any of these big cycles which we have seen. And see, the reason is we are not new to this. We have built a very resilient system, right? So software companies in India, we have, of course, quarterly results might be low this time because the sales are low, because it's a B2C kind of a segment or a B2B kind of a segment where we might see, we might see a reduce after 6 months. But overall, this is just a dent in the industry. I think we will overcome this very, very smoothly, and we will continue this journey. So it's very, very important for all of us to upskill ourselves, right? Not stop learning. That's the primary motto I have in life, right? The day you stop learning, that's the day you're
true. And I think that's also where the growth mindset.
Exactly.
Right. True. And I guess that's again circling back to the growth mindset, right? I mean, you just keep going, immaterial of all the calamities that may just keep rolling in. Just need to take it head on, and then just keep on, I would say, surviving and thriving, turn by turn.
Right. Again,
my last question to you for today.
Lifelong learner, right? So that's the most important thing. As long as you're a lifelong learner, I think things will.
Right.
I don't think you need to really worry about
that. Right. So my last question to you for today is that what kind of people or skills and capabilities are going to be required in the GCCs of the future?
So again, depends on the verticals. So if you are, let me not talk about the core skills of the GCCs, right? So if you are let's say if you're joining this company, of course you need to have all the finance backgrounds. if you're joining a semiconductor company,
Mhm.
you have all the semiconductor skill sets which will be required for the organization. So vertical, expertise which is required. Of course, it depends on the industries. All of us know about it. We need to have that. There is absolutely no doubt about that. Apart from that, there are a lot of other skill sets which we are looking for right now. Right? These are primarily, you can categorize them as soft skills. Right? Somebody with a design thinking kind of a certification today really will help. Somebody with the cross cultural experience definitely helps the organization. Somebody who has a wide course ideas through either experience or through research, this is where the value can be added. So finally it comes down to the value addition, right? What kind of a value addition I want to achieve as a leader for the GCC. According to that, can I find the right talent in the market? And today, skilling is not difficult, right? It is not, when I wanted to learn something in 2000, it was not as easy as what it is today. Today, I can actually, sitting at my home, I can do a degree in MIT, I can do a degree in Stanford, I can do a degree in IISc or IIT today, right? Which was never possible earlier. So it's very, very important to have a vertical expertise and also have a broad expertise. So in the talent word, we used to say we need a tall person, which means we need somebody who's gone to the depth, and sometimes we need a fat person, which means somebody who knows a bit of everything. But today, actually, you need a tall and a fat person, right? You need an expert in one area.
All right, that's the first time terms.
So
Wonderful.
you need somebody who's got a depth at the same time has got a breadth also. It's very, very important to have that.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Sure.
So for more questions, do reach out to us offline on LinkedIn, and we'll have your questions answered by Dr. Koteshwar offline. A round of thanks to our participants for joining us today, and special thanks to our guest speaker for his time and the value add takeaways from his journey. We encourage you to connect with us via our social channels to know more about the MIT ID Innovation Program and upcoming webinars and online courses. I'd like to also invite you all to our next webinar on Friday, 19 June. Our guest speaker is Mr. Shekhar Badwe, founding director of Locus Design. He's been a jury at India Design Mark. He's been a member of the CII's National Committee on Design and the Smart City Initiatives. He will be sharing his insights on driving innovation, the butterfly effect. So please register in case you haven't yet. And for those who are interested in enrolling for the one-year course, we have last few seats left for the second cohort of this prestigious program that will fast track your career path. So log on to mitidinnovation.com to kickstart your innovation journey with a diverse set of co-innovators. Thank you once again, Dr. Shivanand. And we will, definitely circle back in. We need to, in fact, learn more from you. So I definitely see a few more sessions coming up as well.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Everyone stay connected, welcome. Everyone stay connected, stay safe, and please keep innovating every day. Thank you.
Thank you.